Surviving in the Arctic isn't for the weak. When the temperature drops below the point of freezing, every hunt is a battle against nature itself. But for the Inuit, there is no choice. They have to battle the cold in order to survive. So, how do you catch a 4,000-pound giant? Let's begin. These massive marine mammals, weighing up to 4,000 pounds, represent a unique kind of Arctic wealth. A single walrus can provide enough meat to feed an entire community for weeks. Their thick blubber, often reaching depths of 6 inches, transforms into oil that lights homes and waterproofs vital hunting equipment. The iconic tusks, which can grow to an impressive 3 feet in length, become tools and treasured artistic materials that connect modern communities to ancient traditions. Yet harvesting such massive creatures in one of Earth's most unforgiving environments isn't exactly a walk in the park. The practical skills and traditional knowledge required for a successful walrus hunt have been refined over thousands of years, passed down through generations of hunters who learned to read ice formations as easily as most people read street signs. For Arctic communities, walrus hunting isn't just about filling freezers, it's about maintaining a connection to their heritage while ensuring survival in a landscape where success and failure balance on the edge of a knife. And in the Arctic, that edge demands perfection in every aspect of the hunt. The Arctic might be nature's freezer, but that doesn't stop it from being incredibly hard on hunting equipment. When you're dealing with a 4,000-pound animal that can crush ice blocks as thick as your arm, your tools better be tougher than yesterday's frozen leftovers. And trust me, in the Arctic, those leftovers could probably break teeth. One hunter told me his grandmother's caribou stew from last winter could still be used as a hockey puck. In fact, the tools used in walrus hunting represent some of the most durable and well-engineered equipment you'll find anywhere on Earth. Traditional Inuit hunting tools blend ancient wisdom with practical innovation. Take the harpoon, for instance. The traditional design uses a toggle head, a piece that turns sideways under the animal's skin after impact. It's an engineering marvel that would make modern product designers jealous. The toggle head is typically made from walrus ivory or caribou antler, materials that can withstand temperatures cold enough to make steel brittle. These materials aren't chosen by chance. They've proven themselves through centuries of trial and error in the harshest conditions imaginable. Modern harpoons often feature steel tips, but they maintain the same clever toggle principle that Inuit hunters developed centuries ago. The steel isn't just randomly chosen either. It's specifically selected for its ability to maintain strength and flexibility in extreme cold. Some hunters joke that their harpoons are more reliable than their snowmobiles, and they're probably right. There's a saying among Inuit hunters: a snowmobile might leave you stranded, but a good harpoon will never let you down. The harpoon line is another masterpiece of Arctic engineering. Traditional lines were made from bearded seal skin, processed through a method that took weeks to complete. The skin would be cut into thin strips, dried, and then braided into incredibly strong rope. These ropes could withstand several tons of force without breaking, essential when you're trying to hold on to something that weighs as much as a small truck and isn't too happy about being harpooned. The processing of seal skin for rope making is an art form in itself, with specific techniques passed down through generations. Each strip must be cut to precise specifications. Too thick and the rope becomes stiff and unwieldy. Too thin and it might snap under pressure. Today's hunters often use nylon ropes, but they're specially chosen for their cold weather performance. Regular nylon becomes brittle in Arctic temperatures, but these specialized ropes maintain their flexibility down to -40 degrees, the point where Fahrenheit and Celsius finally agree on how cold it is. As one hunter put it, that's the temperature where even your nose hairs start filing complaints with management. Some hunters still prefer traditional sealskin lines, claiming they have better feel when a walrus is pulling on them. As one hunter put it, nylon tells you if the walrus is pulling. Sealskin tells you what the walrus is thinking. This innate understanding of how different materials behave under stress is crucial for survival in the Arctic. The tools require constant maintenance, a fact that's led to some interesting innovations. Hunters often store their harpoon heads in seal oil, which prevents rust and keeps the mechanisms moving smoothly even in extreme cold. This traditional preservation method has proven so effective that even hunters using modern equipment often adopt it. The seal oil creates a protective barrier against moisture and salt, two elements that can quickly destroy hunting equipment in the Arctic environment. A well-maintained traditional harpoon can last for generations. There are documented cases of harpoons being passed down for over 100 years, with the basic toggle head design remaining virtually unchanged. That's what engineers call, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Each harpoon carries its own history, with marks and notches often indicating successful hunts or significant events. Some older harpoons have tallies carved into their handles, recording decades of successful catches. The float bags, which help tire out a struck walrus and mark its location, show similar ingenuity. Traditionally made from whole seal skins sewn and turned inside out, these floats could hold enough air to support several hundred pounds. Modern hunters might use inflatable buoys, but the principle remains the same. Some hunters have started using bright orange floats instead of traditional brown ones, leading to the joke that modern walruses must think they're being hunted by giant citrus fruits. These floats play a crucial role in the hunt, not just marking location, but also helping to exhaust the walrus by forcing it to drag the buoyant objects through the water. Every tool has its specific purpose and place in the hunt. The ice testing tool, or savgut, is used to check ice thickness and stability. It's essentially a spear with a specialized tip that can tell an experienced hunter not just how thick the ice is, but also its quality. One hunter demonstrated this by tapping the ice and declaring, "This ice is like my mother-in-law, thick but untrustworthy." His mother-in-law, fortunately, lives in another community. The savgut's design allows hunters to quickly assess ice conditions while moving, a crucial skill when tracking walrus across potentially dangerous terrain. The hunting toolkit also includes a collection of specialized knives. The traditional ulu, a rounded knife with a handle on top, is perfect for processing meat and hide. Its design allows for maximum force with minimal effort, which is crucial when you're cutting through several inches of walrus hide. Speaking of which, here's another interesting fact. Walrus hide can be up to 4 inches thick in some places, making it tougher than most boot leather. The ulu's curved blade and ergonomic handle allow hunters to work for hours without fatigue, an essential feature when processing a walrus that can provide hundreds of pounds of meat and usable materials. Modern additions to the toolkit include ice anchors and pulley systems that help secure and haul caught walrus. These tools blend seamlessly with traditional equipment, creating a hybrid system that honors ancestral knowledge while embracing useful innovations. Some hunters have even started using special synthetic materials for their sleds that reduce friction on the ice. Though, as one elder noted, a fancy sled won't help if you don't know where to point it. He then added with a wink, "It just means you'll get lost faster and in much more style." This balance between traditional and modern tools shows how Inuit hunters adapt while maintaining their cultural heritage. Storage and transportation of these tools requires its own set of specialized equipment. Traditional tool bags made from waterproof sealskin keep essential items dry and organized. These bags have specific pockets and compartments for each tool, arranged so hunters can find what they need by feeling alone, crucial when you're wearing thick mittens in the dark. One young hunter learned this the hard way when he reached into the wrong pocket and grabbed his lunch instead of his ice tester. The design of these bags reflects generations of experience, with each pocket placed for optimal weight distribution and quick access. The most remarkable aspect of these tools isn't just their effectiveness, but their adaptability. Over generations, Inuit hunters have refined each piece of equipment to work perfectly in some of the harshest conditions on Earth. A single hunting expedition might subject these tools to temperatures ranging from minus 40 degrees Celsius to just above freezing, all while dealing with the tremendous forces exerted by a struggling walrus. This adaptability extends to the hunters themselves, who must maintain intimate knowledge of how each tool performs under different conditions. Each hunting tool undergoes rigorous testing in real-world conditions before being trusted on a hunt. Hunters often spend hours practicing with new equipment, ensuring they understand its limitations and capabilities. This testing period is crucial. A tool failure during a walrus hunt could have catastrophic consequences. Many hunters maintain backup equipment, carefully stored and maintained, ready to replace any tool that shows signs of wear. The relationship between hunter and tools goes beyond mere functionality. Each piece of equipment carries stories, memories, and lessons learned from close calls and successful hunts. Tools are often marked with personal symbols or family markings, creating a physical connection between past and present generations of hunters. These marks serve both practical and cultural purposes. They help identify ownership while also maintaining a record of the tool's history and the skills it represents. As night falls in the Arctic and tools are carefully cleaned and stored away, hunters know that tomorrow they'll face new challenges. But with generations of knowledge built into every tool, they're ready for whatever the hunt might bring. After all, in the Arctic, your life doesn't just depend on having the right tools, it depends on knowing exactly how to use them. Now, let's dive into what might be the most challenging part of walrus hunting: actually finding these massive creatures in the vast Arctic wilderness. As my old friend Aklak from Igloolik once told me, finding a walrus is like trying to spot a black dot on a white sheet of paper the size of a football field. Except the dot keeps moving and the paper changes shape every day. The Arctic isn't just big, it's absolutely enormous. We're talking about millions of square miles of ice, water, and more ice. You'd think spotting a 4,000-pound animal would be easy, right? Well, here's the funny thing. Walruses are actually master hide-and-seek champions of the North. They blend surprisingly well with the rocky shores and ice flows despite their size. One hunter told me he once walked right past a group of walruses because he thought they were just oddly shaped rocks. The real secret to finding walrus lies in understanding their daily routines. These creatures are creatures of habit, but their habits change with the seasons. During spring, they love hanging out on ice floes that drift near their favorite feeding spots. A single walrus can eat up to 6,000 clams in one day. That's more shellfish than most seafood restaurants serve in a week. These feeding grounds become hot spots for hunters, but getting there requires perfect timing. The ice tells stories to those who know how to read it. Experienced hunters can spot a walrus's presence just by looking at ice patterns. Walruses need to breathe every 4 to 10 minutes when they're active, so they maintain breathing holes in the ice. These holes aren't just random. They're carefully chosen spots where the ice is naturally thinner. Hunters look for these holes, which can be up to 3 feet wide and have distinct smooth edges from repeated use. The wind carries crucial information too. When the wind blows just right, hunters can hear walruses from over a mile away. Their distinctive grunts and bellows echo across the ice. It's a sound that's hard to describe, but once you've heard it, you never forget it. Some hunters say it sounds like a mix between a lion's roar and your uncle snoring after Thanksgiving dinner. But it gets interesting when you know that the walruses are social media experts of the sea. They communicate constantly with each other, and hunters have learned to recognize different types of calls. There's the all-clear grunt, the danger-approaching snort, and even the, "Hey, I found some good clams over here" whistle. Understanding these sounds is crucial for hunters trying to track a herd. Migration patterns play a huge role in locating walrus. These patterns have been passed down through generations of Inuit families, each adding their own observations to the knowledge base. Modern hunters use GPS to mark successful hunting spots, but they still rely heavily on traditional knowledge about walrus behavior. For instance, they know that walrus tend to return to the same areas year after year. Talk about creatures of habit. The hunting grounds themselves vary dramatically with the seasons. In winter, walruses prefer areas where strong currents prevent thick ice from forming, creating natural openings called polynyas. These spots become gathering points not just for walrus, but for an entire ecosystem of Arctic wildlife. Hunters who know the locations of these polynyas have a significant advantage in locating their prey. Reading the environment goes beyond just looking for walrus signs. Hunters watch for specific birds that often feed near walrus herds. The appearance of certain seals can also indicate nearby walrus activity. It's like nature's own notification system. Even the color of the water can tell hunters if walruses have been feeding in the area recently. A slightly muddy appearance to the water often indicates that walruses have been digging up clams from the seafloor. The waiting game is perhaps the most challenging part. Once a likely spot is found, hunters might need to wait for hours or even days for the perfect moment. It's not unusual for hunters to build small ice shelters where they can watch and wait while staying protected from the brutal Arctic winds. During these long waits, stories are shared, skills are taught to younger hunters, and traditional knowledge is passed down. Some of the best hunting tips have been shared during these waiting periods, passed from experienced hunters to the next generation. Technology has changed some aspects of walrus hunting, but finding them remains largely a game of patience and traditional knowledge. Some hunters now use binoculars and even drones to spot herds from a distance, but these tools only complement the age-old skills of reading ice, wind, and animal behavior. The most successful hunters are those who blend modern technology with traditional tracking methods. The success rate of finding walrus varies greatly with experience. Novice hunters might spend days searching without success, while experienced hunters can often locate a herd within hours. This isn't just luck, it's the result of years of learning to read the Arctic environment like a book. An experienced hunter can look at an ice formation and know instantly whether it's likely to attract walrus, based on factors like thickness, stability, and proximity to feeding grounds. As the ice conditions continue changing due to warming temperatures, walrus patterns are shifting too. This makes traditional knowledge even more valuable, as hunters need to adapt their searching techniques to new conditions. The ability to find walrus isn't just about following a set of rules, it's about understanding an entire ecosystem and how it changes over time. Hunters must now be more adaptable than ever, combining generations of knowledge with new observations about changing wildlife patterns. With a walrus herd finally located, hunters must switch gears completely. All the knowledge and patience used in finding the walrus now takes a back seat to the art of the silent approach. But that's a story for our next section. When approaching a walrus, hunters must become virtually invisible. No small feat when you're bundled up like a walking winter coat sail. The first rule of walrus approach is simple: never move directly toward them. Walruses might have poor eyesight, but they can detect straight-line movement with surprising accuracy. Instead, hunters use a zigzag pattern, taking advantage of ice ridges and snow drifts for cover. One wrong move, one careless step, and hours of patient stalking dissolve faster than an ice cube in hot coffee. Traditional hunters use kayaks to approach walrus herds from the water, a method that's both incredibly effective and, frankly, brave enough to make your knees wobble. These kayaks, masterfully crafted from sealskin stretched over wooden frames, can slip through water with barely a ripple. A well-made traditional kayak creates less water displacement than a sleeping seal, making it nearly undetectable to nearby walruses. The role of wind direction cannot be overstated in the approach. Walruses have an excellent sense of smell. They can detect human scent from over half a mile away when the wind is right. Hunters must constantly monitor wind direction, staying downwind of their quarry. Some hunters carry a small pouch of snow powder to release occasionally, nature's version of a wind direction indicator. Team coordination during the approach resembles an elaborate dance choreographed in slow motion. Different groups of hunters take specific roles. Some act as decoys, carefully positioning themselves to keep the walrus's attention in one direction, while others move into striking positions. These roles rotate throughout the hunt, with hunters communicating through hand signals that haven't changed in generations. At certain temperatures, snow becomes squeaky underfoot, a sound that can travel surprisingly far across the ice. Experienced hunters know exactly how to adjust their weight distribution to minimize noise. The technique involves rolling each foot from heel to toe while keeping your weight centered, similar to a cat stalking its prey, except the cat isn't wearing 3 layers of thermal underwear. Reading walrus behavior becomes critical during the approach. These animals have a complex system of social cues that hunters have learned to interpret. A raised head might indicate curiosity rather than alarm. A slight shift in position could signal anything from mild interest to imminent flight. One hunter described it as reading a book written in walrus, a language where every twitch and turn has meaning. The distance maintained between hunting team members follows a precise formula based on ice conditions and herd size. On solid ice, hunters might spread out more widely, while on thinner ice, they stay closer together for safety. A little-known fact: the optimal spacing between hunters typically matches the average length of 2 adult walruses, about 24 feet. This spacing allows for quick mutual support while minimizing the chance of being detected. Stealth techniques vary with the seasons. During the darker months, hunters can move more freely, but must be extra cautious about noise. In brighter conditions, shadow management becomes crucial. Hunters often time their approaches to coincide with the long shadows of early morning or late evening, when their silhouettes blend more naturally with the ice landscape. Modern hunting parties might use synthetic materials that help mask human scent, but traditional methods remain surprisingly effective. Seal oil rubbed on clothing helps mask human odor, though as one hunter jokes, after a few days of that, even the walruses start to smell better than you do. The most challenging aspect of the approach often involves crossing areas of broken ice. These zones require a combination of balance, timing, and nerves of steel. Hunters must distribute their weight carefully, sometimes lying flat and crawling across particularly unstable sections. The technique has earned the nickname the Arctic Shuffle, a move you won't find in any dance club, but one that might just save your life on the ice. A successful approach also depends on understanding walrus social dynamics. The animals often post sentries, usually older females with sharp eyes and even sharper tusks. These lookouts take turns watching for danger while others rest. Through generations of observation, hunters have learned to identify these sentinel walruses and plan their approaches accordingly. One elder noted with a smirk, "The teenager walruses make the worst guards. They're too busy showing off their new tusks. Patience defines every movement of the hunt. A single approach might take hours, with hunters moving mere inches at a time when close to the herd. But even the most careful approach doesn't guarantee success. The real test of nerves comes next. Striking a walrus might sound straightforward. Just throw the harpoon and hope for the best, right? Well, that's about as effective as trying to parallel park a car while blindfolded. The moment of striking requires more precision than a surgeon and better timing than a professional comedian. The sweet spot for a successful strike lies just behind the walrus's shoulder blade. Hit too far forward, and the thick blubber might prevent proper penetration. Too far back, and the strike won't be effective enough. The target area is roughly the size of a dinner plate. Not exactly a generous target when you're dealing with a moving 4,000-pound animal that could decide to dive underwater at any second. A walrus's skin can be up to 4 inches thick, with a blubber layer adding another 6 inches of cushioning. That's 10 inches of tough tissue the harpoon needs to penetrate. To put that in perspective, it's like trying to push a needle through a stack of leather jackets while they're being worn by a very uncooperative customer. The actual throw requires explosive power combined with laser-like accuracy. Hunters must generate enough force to drive the harpoon through all those layers while maintaining perfect control over the direction. The technique involves a specific throwing motion that's been refined over centuries. One elder describes it as throwing lightning, quick, powerful, and precise. Cold muscles don't exactly perform at their best, which is why hunters often do subtle exercises to stay warm during the approach. These movements need to be small enough not to alert the walrus, but sufficient to keep the blood flowing. As one hunter puts it, you need to be ready to throw a harpoon even if you can't feel your fingers, which is most of the time. The critical moment before the strike involves reading the walrus's breathing pattern. These marine mammals typically surface to breathe every 5 to 7 minutes, staying up for about 2 minutes before diving again. That's the window of opportunity. Hunters time their strikes to coincide with the middle of the breathing interval when the walrus is most relaxed and stable. A peculiar fact, walruses actually hold their breath when they're nervous, making their breathing pattern a reliable indicator of whether they've spotted the hunters. A 20-mile-per-hour wind can deflect a harpoon by several inches over a throwing distance of 20 feet. Experienced hunters instinctively adjust their aim to compensate for wind conditions. They don't need fancy ballistics calculators. Generations of practice have taught them exactly how much to adjust for different wind speeds and directions. The harpoon line itself requires special handling during the strike. It needs to play out smoothly without tangling, a task that's about as easy as untangling Christmas lights while wearing mittens. The line is coiled in a specific pattern that allows it to deploy without snagging. Some hunters can even detect problems with the line's deployment by sound alone, a skill that's earned them the nickname the line whisperers. Team coordination during the strike resembles a well-rehearsed orchestra performance, minus the music and plus a lot more adrenaline. Each hunter knows their role. The primary striker, the line handlers, and the backup team must move in perfect synchronization. One wrong step, one moment of hesitation, and hours of careful preparation evaporate like breath in the Arctic air. Modern materials have improved certain aspects of the strike, but the fundamental techniques remain unchanged. Steel harpoon heads might be sharper than traditional bone ones, but they still need to be thrown with the same precision. Some hunters joke that the only real improvement is that modern harpoons don't need to be sharpened as often. A small comfort when you're facing down a walrus that weighs as much as a mid-size SUV. The most remarkable aspect of the strike is how hunters maintain their composure. The adrenaline surge must be managed, breathing controlled, and movements kept deliberate and smooth. It's like trying to thread a needle while riding a roller coaster, except the needle is a harpoon and the roller coaster is the Arctic environment itself. Success or failure often comes down to milliseconds. The difference between a perfect strike and a complete miss might be the width of a walrus whisker. Speaking of which, those whiskers, called vibrissae, are incredibly sensitive and can detect movement in the water from surprising distances. A successful striker must account for this, making their final movement so smooth it doesn't send telltale vibrations through the ice. The next few moments after the strike will test every ounce of strength and skill the hunting party possesses. Because when you've just harpooned a creature that thinks ice boulders make comfortable pillows, you better be ready for what comes next. The moment after a walrus is struck unleashes enough raw power to make a bodybuilder look like a couch potato. A male walrus can generate over 2,000 pounds of pulling force, enough to drag a small car across ice. During the first few seconds of the struggle, hunting teams often slide across the ice like kids on a very fast, very scary amusement park ride. Strength alone won't win this battle. The hunter's technique involves a careful balance of force and flexibility. The lead line handler plants their feet in a wide stance, knees bent, body angled away from the hole, a position that would make any tug-of-war champion proud. Meanwhile, other team members quickly secure additional anchor points in the ice, creating a web of resistance against the walrus's powerful pulls. A striking fact about this phase of the hunt, the average struggle lasts between 20 and 45 minutes, during which time the hunting team might have to resist more than 100 intense pulls. The physical demands are so high that hunters rotate positions every few minutes. One elder hunter claims he burned more calories in a single walrus struggle than his grandson did during an entire week at his office job, though he admits his grandson's coffee runs might count as exercise. The walrus's initial reaction follows a predictable pattern, but that doesn't make it any easier to handle. First comes the power dive, a sudden explosive plunge that can snap inferior lines like cotton thread. This is followed by what hunters call the submarine phase, where the walrus swims deep and strong, testing every knot and connection in the hunting gear. The line cuts through the water with enough force to create a high-pitched whine, earning this moment the nickname the walrus whistle. Team communication during the struggle must be clear and constant, despite everyone wearing thick mittens and heavy winter gear. Hunters use a combination of verbal calls and hand signals that haven't changed much in generations. More slack! Brace left! Switch out! These commands cut through the Arctic air like bullets, each one crucial to maintaining control of the situation. One hunter jokes that it's the only time you'll hear perfectly coordinated shouting outside of a military drill or a family dinner argument. The physics of the struggle are fascinating. A single hunting line can experience forces exceeding 3,000 pounds during peak moments. The hunters use this force against the walrus, allowing it to tire itself out through its own powerful movements. Ice anchoring techniques have evolved over generations to handle these intense forces. Hunters create multiple anchor points using ice screws and specialized hooks, arranging them in a triangular pattern that distributes the load. This setup can withstand forces that would tear apart lesser arrangements. Some hunters have developed a technique they call the star pattern, using 5 or more anchor points to create an almost unbreakable hold on the ice. Different animals have different fighting styles. Young bulls tend to make explosive, erratic movements, while older ones often employ more sustained, powerful pulls. Experienced hunters can often tell the age and size of a walrus just by feeling how it fights on the line. As one hunter puts it, each walrus fights like it has its own personality. Some are boxers, some are wrestlers, and some just try to show off. Wind chill factors often drop below negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit, cold enough to freeze exposed skin in minutes. Hunters must maintain their grip and coordination while wearing thick gloves, moving across ice that's sometimes smoother than a bowling alley. One clever innovation involves spreading seal blood on boot soles for extra traction, though this technique comes with the downside of making your boots smell like, well, seal blood. The role of float bags becomes critical during extended struggles. These buoyant aids, attached to secondary lines, help tire the walrus and mark its location during long dives. Modern hunters sometimes use special inflatable buoys, but traditional sealskin floats remain popular. They're more durable in extreme cold and, according to some hunters, have just the right amount of give and take in the water. Plus, they don't deflate if punctured by ice, a feature that no amount of modern engineering has managed to improve upon. An interesting adaptation in recent years has been the development of quick-release mechanisms for emergency situations. These allow hunters to instantly disconnect from a dangerous situation while keeping the main line secured. It's a bit like having an ejector seat in a car. You hope you never need it, but you're glad it's there. The traditional version of this involved a special knot that could be undone with a single pull, showing that sometimes the old ways had already figured out the best solution. Statistics show that about 30% of struck walruses escape despite the hunter's best efforts. These outcomes usually result from equipment failure or poor team coordination rather than the walrus's strength alone. That's why hunters maintain their gear with almost obsessive attention to detail and practice their coordination techniques even during the off-season. After all, nobody wants to be the team that literally lets the big one get away. When the struggle finally begins to turn in the hunter's favor, preparation for the next phase must begin immediately. Hauling a walrus onto the ice is about as easy as parallel parking a whale. After the exhausting struggle in the water, hunters face their next challenge: moving something that weighs as much as 2 cars without the convenience of wheels. It's the kind of task that makes moving a couch up 3 flights of stairs look like child's play. The first critical decision comes right after the walrus is tired: choosing the exit point. Not just any spot along the ice edge will do. Hunters look for what they call a landing shelf, a section of ice thick enough to support the massive weight, but low enough to aid in hauling. These spots are so valuable that some hunting communities have traditional names for reliable hauling locations, passed down through generations like family recipes. It takes an average of 8 people working in perfect coordination to haul an adult walrus onto the ice. The force required often exceeds 5,000 pounds, about the same as lifting a fully loaded pickup truck. Hunters use a complex system of ropes and pulleys that would impress any engineering student, though, as one hunter quipped, "We had pulleys figured out long before anyone wrote a textbook about them." The actual hauling technique has evolved over centuries of trial and error. Teams arrange themselves in a formation that looks a bit like a strange dance routine. The strongest pullers take the front positions, while others manage the guide ropes that keep the walrus from sliding sideways. Everyone moves in synchronized pulls, their movements timed to shared vocal commands that echo across the ice. Traditional tools play a crucial role in the hauling process. The kamutig, a special sled designed for Arctic conditions, often serves as an anchor point for the pulley system. These sleds are built without nails or screws. Instead, they use rope lashing that flexes with the ice, making them incredibly durable. Some hunters swear these traditional sleds could survive a nuclear blast, though nobody's keen on testing that theory. The physics of ice friction creates some surprising advantages. At certain temperatures, a thin layer of water forms between the walrus and the ice, creating a natural sliding surface. Hunters take advantage of this phenomenon by timing their pulls to coincide with these moments of reduced friction. It's nature's version of a slip and slide, except the thing sliding weighs 2 tons and has sharp tusks. Speaking of tusks, they present their own unique challenge during hauling. Male walruses can have tusks up to 3 feet long, which need to be managed carefully to prevent them from catching on the ice edge. Teams often assign a specific person to guide the tusks using specialized hooks. This job earned the nickname Tusk Whisperer, though most hunters agree it's more about muscle than sweet talk. Temperature plays a crucial role in the hauling process. The ideal temperature range is between -5 degrees Celsius and -15 degrees Celsius. Any warmer, and the ice becomes too soft and dangerous. Any colder, and the equipment becomes too rigid. One hunter tells of a time when it was so cold, the ropes became stiff enough to stand upright on their own. Like frozen spaghetti, he says. Except spaghetti doesn't cost you a week's wages if it breaks. Innovation meets tradition in modern hauling methods. Some teams now use synthetic ropes that are stronger than steel by weight, but they still rely on traditional knowledge for knot tying and rope management. A well-tied knot in minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit weather can mean the difference between success and watching several thousand pounds of walrus disappear back into the Arctic waters. The most remarkable aspect of the hauling process is how hunters adapt their techniques to different ice conditions. Thick, stable ice allows for a more straightforward approach, while thin ice requires distributing the weight across a wider area. Hunters even develop different calls and commands for various ice conditions, a specialized vocabulary that would baffle most language professors. Time management becomes critical during hauling. The entire process needs to be completed before the walrus meat begins to freeze, which can happen surprisingly quickly in Arctic temperatures. Teams often work in rotating shifts, with each group pulling for about 2 minutes before switching out. Any longer, and muscle fatigue becomes dangerous. Modern technology has attempted to simplify the hauling process, but with mixed results. Motorized winches might seem like an obvious solution, but they're often too heavy to transport safely across thin ice. Plus, as one elder pointed out, machines break, but a well-trained team of hunters only gets stronger. There's also the small matter of batteries refusing to work in extreme cold. Another point scored for traditional methods. After securing the walrus on solid ice, the hunting party faces their next challenge. Processing a walrus makes butchering a cow look like slicing a birthday cake. The sheer size of the animal demands not just skill and strength, but also a deep understanding of anatomy and a masterful sense of organization. It's a bit like disassembling a 2-ton puzzle, where every piece has a specific purpose and destination. The butchering process follows a precise sequence developed over countless generations. First comes the removal of the tough outer hide, a task that requires specialized tools and techniques. The hide alone can weigh up to 500 pounds and measures about an inch thick in most places. Traditional ulis, curved knives with incredibly sharp edges, slice through this leather-like material with remarkable precision. Some hunters joke that you could probably use walrus hide to make tank armor, though nobody's tried it yet. A single adult walrus can provide up to 1,500 pounds of meat and edible organs. That's enough to feed several families for months. The meat itself has a distinctive dark red color and contains more protein per pound than beef. Speaking of nutrition, walrus liver packs more vitamin C than oranges, a crucial source of vitamins in the Arctic, where fresh fruit is about as common as palm trees. The distribution of the harvest follows traditional customs that would impress any logistics expert. Each part of the walrus goes to specific families or community members based on their role in the hunt and their needs. The system ensures nothing goes to waste and everyone benefits from the hunt. One elder compares it to a well-orchestrated symphony, except instead of music, you're coordinating the movement of several thousand pounds of meat and materials. The blubber layer presents its own unique challenges. This thick insulating fat can be up to 6 inches deep and requires careful removal to preserve its quality. Skilled hunters can separate it from the meat in large sheets, a technique that takes years to master. The blubber serves multiple purposes. It's rendered into oil for lamps, used as a food source, and even helps waterproof traditional hunting equipment. One hunter noted that nothing makes boots more waterproof than walrus oil. Though he wouldn't recommend it for your everyday sneakers, the meat needs to be kept from freezing solid while being cut. No small feat in the Arctic, but it also can't be allowed to warm too much. Hunters often work in shifts, with some processing while others prepare storage containers or arrange transportation. It's like a highly specialized Arctic cooking show, except the kitchen is made of ice and the refrigerator is basically everywhere. The tusks require special attention during processing. These massive ivory teeth, which can grow up to 3 feet long, are carefully removed and cleaned. They've traditionally been used to make tools and art pieces, though nowadays they're often preserved as ceremonial items. A little-known fact, walrus tusks continue growing throughout the animal's life, adding growth rings like trees. Some hunters can estimate a walrus's age just by counting these rings. The bone structure of a walrus provides another valuable resource. The dense bones, particularly from the skull and shoulders, are traditionally carved into tools and hunting implements. Some communities have special craftsmen who can transform these bones into everything from sled runners to fishing hooks. The shoulder blades alone are large enough to serve as impromptu snow shovels in a pinch, leading to the old Arctic joke about walruses helping with winter cleanup even after they're gone. Even the internal organs have specific uses. The stomach, cleaned and stretched, becomes a traditional drum membrane that produces a deep, resonant sound perfect for ceremonial gatherings. The intestines, properly prepared, transform into waterproof clothing material that outperforms many modern synthetics in harsh conditions. The heart, rich in nutrients, is often shared among the hunters for immediate consumption. One hunter quips that eating fresh walrus heart gives you the strength of a walrus, minus the blubbery waistline. Modern storage methods blend with traditional practices in fascinating ways. While some parts are still preserved using ancestral techniques like air drying and fermentation, others might find their way into modern freezers. The community's traditional food storage facilities, built into the permafrost, maintain a perfect temperature year-round without using any electricity. It's nature's version of a walk-in freezer, and it never breaks down. Traditional preservation techniques include a method called igunak, where specific cuts of meat are fermented under carefully controlled conditions. This process, which might seem unusual to outsiders, creates a preserved food that's both nutritious and culturally significant. The technique requires such precise knowledge that experienced processors can tell the quality of the final product just by the sound the meat makes when cut. The most remarkable aspect of walrus processing is how it brings the community together. Everyone has a role to play, from the youngest children learning to clean small pieces to the elders supervising the distribution. The process often becomes a living classroom where traditional knowledge is passed down through hands-on experience. One hunter remembers learning to process walrus alongside his grandfather, who could identify every muscle and organ by touch alone, a skill developed through decades of practice. Sharing stories during processing is a cherished tradition. Hunters recount tales of past hunts, elders share traditional knowledge, and children learn their community's history through these conversations. In this way, the walrus continues giving to the community long after the hunt ends, not just through its physical bounty, but through the connections it helps create between generations. The timing of processing is crucial and often misunderstood by outsiders. Hunters don't just cut up a walrus whenever they catch one. They time the processing based on several environmental factors. The phase of the moon affects ambient light for nighttime work, while wind direction influences how quickly the meat might freeze or spoil. Some hunters even swear they can smell incoming weather changes and will adjust their processing schedule accordingly. Temperature management during processing requires incredible ingenuity. Hunters often create temporary snow walls to block harsh winds, while simultaneously using snow's insulating properties to keep meat at the perfect temperature. They'll sometimes dig shallow pits in the snow, creating microclimates that maintain ideal processing conditions. One veteran hunter demonstrated how different types of snow can create varying temperatures. Powder snow for colder storage, packed snow for slightly warmer conditions. The role of weather prediction in processing is fascinating and rarely documented. Hunters have developed a complex system of reading clouds that specifically relates to meat preservation. Certain cloud formations signal optimal processing conditions, while others warn of approaching weather that could compromise the meat. Some communities maintain weather watchers during processing, usually elders with decades of experience who can predict processing conditions up to 48 hours in advance based on subtle atmospheric changes. Processing locations themselves carry historical significance. Many communities have traditional processing spots that have been used for generations, each chosen for specific advantages: natural windbreaks, optimal sun exposure, or proximity to ice storage areas. These sites often have names in Inuktitut that describe their unique features or commemorate significant events. One processing ground translates roughly to "where grandfather's harpoon broke, but the feast was good anyway." The sound of processing has its own language. Experienced processors can tell if a knife needs sharpening just by the sound it makes passing through blubber. They can identify if meat is freezing too quickly by the specific crunch it makes when cut. Even the sound of footsteps on snow around the processing area carries meaning, different pitches indicating whether the snow is too warm or cold for optimal processing conditions. As the final pieces of walrus are stored away, and tools cleaned for the next hunt, it's clear that processing these massive animals is far more than just butchering meat. It's a delicate dance of traditional knowledge and timing, where weather reading meets knife skills, where the phases of the moon guide processing schedules, and where even the sounds of footsteps in snow carry crucial information.